Hi everybody, Dr. Joe here. Thank you for making time for your next lesson. In the last episode, we talked extensively about a formula to create brain coherence. And I just want to review it for you so you can hear it again. Remember, the hormones of stress, the arousal of those chemicals causes us to draw from this invisible field of energy, this vital life force surrounding our body, and turn it into chemistry. And the field around our body shrinks, and we feel more separate from our connection to the field. We feel more like matter, less like energy. By the same means, the hormones of stress cause an arousal in the brain to go into a very high beta brainwave pattern. Now, for the short term, that's great. But when you're stuck in that state and you're trying to control and predict everything in your life, shifting your attention to all of those different elements in your environment, to your body, and to time, activates those different neurological networks quickly. And the habituation of shifting your attention like that causes the brain to become a house divided against itself. Now the brain is incoherent. Now the brain is functioning out of order. And this state becomes a habituation for many people. By the same means, the hormones of stress causes our senses to become heightened, and we become materialists, and we narrow our focus on the cause, on our outer environment. Now, quantum physics says reality is both particle and wave, matter and energy. And so many people get so hooked into only focusing on the material world. So when it comes time to create and you're living by the hormones of stress, it makes sense then if your senses are heightened, if you don't see it, if you can't smell it, if you can't hear it, you can't taste it, you can't feel it, you can't experience it in this three-dimensional reality, it doesn't exist. And by the same means, people who are dependent on the hormones of stress for an arousal, and they need the problems and conditions in their life because that makes them feel something, well, it makes total sense then if you're living in that state, you're not going to want to create. It's not a time to create. It's time to run, fight, and hide. So then how much of your waking day do you put your attention on matter? And how much of your waking day do you put your attention on energy? How much do you focus on the particle in quantum physics? And how much do you focus on the wave of possibility? Now, think about this. In the quantum model of reality, the scientists that first started studying quantum physics, Einstein and Planck, they noticed that when they were studying the behaviors of electrons, they thought that the behavior of an electron, when they disturbed it with energy, just like an apple falling from a tree, the small body, the apple, would fall towards a larger body, the Earth, towards the center of the Earth, that it would fall in a very predictable and smooth and continuous fashion. And all you have to do is know the distance and the speed, and you can determine the time it's going to get there. So that world of Newtonian classical physics is all about the predictable. But when they disturbed the electron didn't fall in a smooth, continuous fashion towards the nucleus of the atom. It behaved differently. It appeared and then disappeared, then appeared and disappeared. And all of a sudden, the subatomic world of very tiny things didn't behave like the very large world of objects and things. So then when they started to measure the electron, it was very interesting because the electron went from a cloud, a wave function of possibility, and it collapsed when they looked for it to measure it into a particle. In other words, that energy, that wave function of possibility collapsed into a particle called collapsing the wave function. When they stopped observing it, when they stopped looking for it, it moved back into energy and possibility. So all of a sudden they realized that subjective mind had an effect on the objective world, that mind and matter were so connected, so combined, that it was impossible to separate the two. And in every quantum physics experiment, you need an observer present, which means mind has to be considered. Now, it only works for the very tiny and not for the very large. Subatomic world is influenced by mind, but what about real-life events that we experience in our outer world? Well, people will say to me, well, the quantum model of reality works for the very tiny and not for the very large, the observer effect. For the tiny but not the large. And I always say maybe we're just poor observers. Maybe instead of creating from matter, if we create from the field, we could exert greater effects. So then, when you broaden your focus and you sense nothing but frequency or energy, I'm asking you to put more of your attention on energy and frequency, because most people do not put any attention on energy and frequency. They're materialists. They only pay attention to the material world. And the act of broadening your focus and sensing nothing but space is causing you to connect to that unifying field, that invisible field of coherent and organized energy that connects everything physical and material. And it begins to entrain your nervous system into more order, suppressing functions in the neocortex. And all of a sudden, you begin to get beyond your conscious mind, beyond your analytical mind. And now you're in the operating system, where true change can take place. And we have thousands of measurements of people who have even never meditated before by applying this principle of open focus, by sensing nothing but space, being in that vacuum without a name, without a profession, without a culture, without a diet, without a disease, without a past, without a body, without a cell phone, without an identity. Lingering there as an awareness and getting comfortable lingering in the unknown is that place we want to create from. So then keep practicing it. Keep taking your attention off your body. Keep taking your attention off the people in your life, the things you own, the objects you're connected with, the places you know, and truly time itself. And when you do that properly, you become pure consciousness, and you're disinvesting all of your attention and energy out of this three-dimensional reality, out of this known and into the unknown. And that blackness, that vacuum, is the unknown. And when you're no longer thinking about all of those elements, your body, your environment, and time, just like in the quantum physics experiment, when they took their attention off the electron and it turned back into possibility, when you disconnect from everything known in your world, in your life is going to turn into possibility. And all I want you to do is keep investing your attention into that blackness, into that unknown. I want you to keep surrendering any aspect of your limited self to join your greater self. To lose yourself in nothing to become everything. To become more of it and less of you. To pay more attention to it and less attention to you. And you will hear me say at certain times, and become the blackness, become that vacuum. I'm asking you to forget that you're your body. You can't do that if you're your body. You can only do that as consciousness. And when you become nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, and no time, this is the moment you become pure consciousness. This is the moment you walk through the door to the quantum field. And that eye of the needle that you have to pass through, you can't take anything physical or material with you. You can only go as pure consciousness. And I have labored for years to teach people how to get to this place. I have labored for years to teach them on how to get beyond themselves and get beyond their identity, their personality, the same thoughts, the same behaviors, the same emotions, and to linger as an awareness in this field. And that point then is the beginning. That is the first process of creating that type of brain coherence. Now, what about the heart? Let's talk about what happens when you live by the hormones of stress, and the arousal of those chemicals is causing your heart to beat quicker, and it's sending blood to your extremities to prepare it to run, to fight, or to hide. The body is getting prepared for some emergency. It shuts down the digestive juices. It's not a time to digest right now. It's not a time to eat a meal. It's time for survival. It's time for emergency. And people spend 70% of the time living in the state when their heart starts to race and they're not running because they're sitting in traffic. They can't fight because they're sitting in traffic, and they can't hide. The rush of these chemicals causing the heart to beat against the constricted blood flow. The heart starts to beat very incoherently. And now energy, when we're under stress, leaves the brain and goes to the lower centers of the body. And when we're living by the hormones of stress and the heart is pumping against a closed system, the resistance against that closed system causes the heart to beat incoherently. And energy leaves the heart. Now this is when we stop trusting. This is when we stop loving. This is when we stop caring, because survival says you got to take care of you first. And people become very selfish. So then if energy leaves the heart and there's no energy for the creative process, then we got to get energy back in the heart. And when the heart is beating incoherently like this, and there's no resilience in the heart, people all of a sudden close their heart down, because they're going to say, in survival, if you open your heart, if you're vulnerable, if you're sitting still and you're creating, it goes against the survival gene. In other words, the more people are conditioned or dependent on the hormones of stress to make them feel alive, the less likely they'll want to create. Now think of your heart as your creative center. Think of your heart as the union of polarity, the union of duality, the union of opposites. This place right here is where wholeness begins. This is the door to the more divine aspects of ourselves. So then, when we practice opening our hearts, it goes against a lot of conditioning, because most people have been bruised when they open their heart. They were taken advantage of. They were manipulated in some way, and they don't want to have that experience again. But just think of your heart as the creative center. And when energy makes it into the heart, once energy can move into this heart and you can place your attention on it, where you place your attention is where you place your energy. And out of the infinite things you could put your attention on, I'm going to ask you to put your attention right here. And once you place your attention in your heart, if you learn how to activate this heart by creating elevated emotions and regulating your breath, once energy makes it here, our research is so elegant and so beautiful. Once energy makes it to the heart, and the heart starts beating more orderly and more coherent, and people can trade limited emotions, survival emotions, for elevated emotions, and learn how to practice opening this creative center. Once energy makes it here, you'll see a dramatic change in energy to the brain. In other words, the heart beats in a rhythmic fashion. The beating of that rhythmic heart in a very specific frequency causes energy to move directly back into the heart. Now there's energy in the brain to create with. There's energy to begin to forecast new possibilities. And the brain waves naturally move out of that beta state into a more alpha, more creative state. We've seen this thousands of times. So heart coherence acts as an amplifier to create brain coherence, to put more energy in the brain. Now there's energy to create. By the same means, when the heart starts beating coherently and orderly, like pounding a drum or like dropping pebbles in a still lake, pebble after pebble after pebble, the heart begins to emit a very broad magnetic field. Now, the research shows that when the heart is coherent, that magnetic field can be up to 3 meters wide. Now, we're more wave and less particle. We're more energy and less matter. And now we start feeling connected to something greater, connected to everyone, to everybody, to everything, to every place, to every time. We start feeling like we're connected to something greater. When the heart begins to beat coherently and that energetic magnetic field begins to emanate from the heart, that energy is frequency. And frequency now can carry information. And now imagine now, coherent heart producing this broadened magnetic field. I always say the thought is the electrical charge in the quantum field, coherent brain. The feeling is the magnetic charge in the quantum field, coherent heart. And now you have a Wi-Fi signal. Now you have a broadened field around your body. And the energy, when the heart is activated, that frequency of coherence can carry the thought of your wealth. It can carry the thought of your health. It could carry the thought of your new career, your new life. The frequency of suffering cannot carry the thought of your health or your wealth. It carries a different set of thoughts. So once energy makes it to the heart, it influences energy to the brain. It creates more coherent alpha brainwave patterns. We've measured this thousands of times. You're in a more creative state. By the same means now, the field around your body is beginning to broaden. Your heart is connecting you to the quantum field a little bit more. Once that field is broadened and it's coherent, you can lay an intention or a thought on that frequency. And now you are broadcasting a whole new electromagnetic signature into the field. And whatever you broadcast into the field is your experiment with destiny. And so we practice heart coherence. And in the next episode, I'm going to talk to you about the process of how to do it. And we've partnered with HeartMath Institute for many, many years. And our research shows without a doubt that people can sustain heart coherence, not just for 5 minutes. We have several people in our community that could regulate heart coherence for up to an hour at a time. Now it's a skill for them. What's the significance of that? Well, if you've just combined a clear intention, coherent brain, with an elevated emotion, coherent heart, and now you are changing your energy and broadcasting a whole new electromagnetic signature into the field, that whatever you broadcast into the field is your experiment with destiny. You just can't do it during your meditation, and then when your meditation is over, get up and start judging your coworkers or getting angry in traffic. I would say to you then, the moment you return back to those old familiar emotions, you just disconnected from the energy of your future, and now you're back to the energy of your past. Don't expect anything to change in your life, because I've been doing this for long enough to tell you that nobody changes until they change their energy. And when they change their energy, they change their lives. So then, when a person then can sustain that state for an extended period of time, throughout the course of their day, they will feel connected to the energy of their future. And if you ask them, why are you frustrated or angry, or why are you suffering again, and they say to you, it's because of that person or that circumstance, then we would say to them, oh my goodness, you're back to the unconscious program of being a victim in your life, believing something in your outer world is controlling your feelings and thoughts. When people learn how to self-regulate, when they learn how to practice heart coherence, and they can practice it with their eyes closed at first, the real game is to take it out for a test drive and be able to do it with your eyes open and stay in your heart your entire day. And if you can maintain that energy your entire day, independent of the conditions in your environment, independent of the cravings or the habituations of your body, and independent of time, and your energy is synchronized to a new future, then it makes sense that you should see synchronicities in your lives. And the synchronicities should be those events that are telling you to keep doing the work, keep practicing it. And the more you refine your heart coherence and your brain coherence, the more you're refining that signal. It makes sense then that incoherence in the brain and incoherence in the heart means you are separate from the field. You're not connected to it. You have no Wi-Fi signal. You're separate from possibilities. And now this is where we force outcomes, we control outcomes, we manipulate outcomes, because we're matter trying to change matter. So then in the next episode, I want to talk to you about the process of creating heart coherence, and then so that we can teach you how to synchronize your energy to possibilities in your future and put it all together. I hope you enjoy.